Hey guys, welcome back to the Blue Podcast. As usual, I'm joined by Ben. How are you doing today, mate?
I'm good, thanks.
Good, that's what I like to hear. And as you'll see, we have two guests for today's episode. We've got Nick and Max. How are you boys doing?
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
That's what I like to hear. So, as you guys will all be aware, Ben is a big Man City fan. We've brought in Nick today, big Nottingham Forest fan like myself. So, and also interesting one, Max is a Derby fan. So obviously Derby are in League One, didn't have the best of seasons last year, but he's got some really interesting perspectives on the rest of the Premier League, and I'm sure we'll have a good debate about Forest's chances this season. But yeah, I think we'll just dive straight into it. Obviously, I don't know if you guys have been following sort of Twitter and the news in the last couple of days, but one of the biggest transfer sagas over the entire window basically is Marc Cucurella to Man City. It's just been confirmed earlier this afternoon that he's gone to Chelsea. However, there was a massive sort of debacle that happened between Fabrizio Romano, who is essentially a football journalist, but sort of at the peak of his career, everybody knows about him. The Here We Go is iconic, and Brighton Football Club, who denied any involvement between the transfer of Cucurella and Chelsea. Ben, I want to hear your thoughts first. Obviously, Man City were in for him for ages. Is that a big loss that Todd Boehly and Chelsea have sort of snatched him out of your hands? You don't have a designated left back now.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that side of it, yeah, it is concerning that we don't have a left back because, I mean, obviously, look at our squad and we can deal with it, blah blah blah. We get a few injuries at the back, we're screwed. But basically, because we don't have a left back as well, it's just yeah. So yeah, in terms of that side of it, not great because we desperately need a left back. And I mean, there's still, this apparently still in the market for a left back and talking to a youth left back as well. So hopefully they sign someone before the end of the window. But if not, then yeah, if we get a few injuries, we'll be screwed at the back. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the actual fee, I mean, at the time I remember, well, when we first sort of City were like, we're not going up to 50. I was like, I mean, I get obviously not wanting to be like messed around and stuff, but he was a target that they outlined and were like, he is one of our priorities. It was only 10 million, we were told. So I was like, maybe we could have done that. But now the actual fee has come out as 55 million plus 7 million add-ons, which is 62 million altogether. It makes a bit more sense why they walked away, because that is a lot more than 40 million, basically. That's a lot more than they were willing to pay, which is fair enough. So yeah, I mean, I'm a bit more. I understand it a bit more now. But yeah, in terms of the actual left back situation, I'm not overly confident going into the season without a proper left back. But hopefully we'll sign one by the end of the window.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because obviously we all know that Cancelo is one of the best fullbacks in the world, but being right-footed, he's not naturally a left back. It's very interesting to me that Chelsea actually went in for Cucurella. It didn't really seem to be a position that they were lacking in. Max, I just want to hear your thoughts, because Ben touched on there, 62.5 million with add-ons is a massive fee for Cucurella, who's only really proved himself one season in the Prem, especially considering he's essentially a left wing back, and Chelsea already have Ben Chilwell, Marcos Alonso. If you want to go further down the pecking order, they've got Kennedy and Emerson. Where do you see him playing for Chelsea? Is he going to be the starting left wing back? Is he going to be potentially slotting in at the left of a back three? And 62.5 million, what are they thinking?
I think they have ridiculously overpaid for Cucurella. And plus, Colwell's gone the other way as well on loan, who could also have done a job in that left centre-back role, which is probably where he's going to play. Like, that's where they needed the cover. So, yeah. And I think there's other better options in the market for that kind of money, like Gvardiol from RB Leipzig or Salzburg, whichever one he's at.
Yeah, great shout, yeah.
He would have been a better option. He's had the same, probably one proven season, but at least he actually is used to that left centre-back role, whereas Cucurella for Brighton mostly played as a left wing back when you've got Chilwell. And especially from an England point of view as well, Chilwell won't want to be the number 2 to Cucurella to get into the World Cup squad. So
yeah, exactly. And I mean, even with Marcus Alonso there at the moment, he's been starting most of the preseason fixtures.
Yeah.
Is Chilwell now third in the pecking order?
I wouldn't say so, because I do think Cucurella will play in that left centre-back role, because it adds more pace to that back three. With Koulibaly and Thiago Silva, they're not that fast. So he'll add some cover, but yeah, it's just a really odd one, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. Sorry, go on, Ben.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, Barca, I mean, that's a whole different thing, but like, I don't know where they're getting the money from and that, but Barca are getting bantered all window for basically getting Chelsea's targets, but Chelsea are basically the Barca of the Premier League, because they're getting everyone else's targets as well. Cucurella, who's City's target, De Jong, who is United's target. I think there's a couple others that they're looking at, like Aubameyang suddenly being mentioned, like. They're just doing a Barca, but for the Premier League. Like,
yeah, genuinely, you're right. If any of you guys have played, I know Nick and Max have played Football Manager before.
Yeah.
It does seem a bit like Chelsea are just hitting the ask agent about availability button just on everybody. It seems like they're linked with so many players. Yeah, you're spot on there.
I don't get the transfer policy at all. It just doesn't seem to be like one, really. I don't know.
No, I think Max, you touched on that earlier, actually, didn't you? We were speaking before we started streaming, and Todd Bowley's just come in, and like, what's going on there?
I think he really wants to make like the team his own, and he's just like splashing the cash anywhere he really can, because he doesn't want like anything to do with Abramovich, really. And I mean, the transfer business hasn't really been great. I think Sterling, he's probably past his best now, coming to the end of his career. Who else did he sign? Koulibaly, that's an okay signing, but I think there are better options than him. So
no, you're right. For me, Koulibaly just seems like they're paying to replace Rudiger. They let Rudiger go on a free, and they've got very similar player profiles. So it just seems like they're paying to replace Rudiger in my mind. It's interesting you mentioned Sterling being past his best. Ben and I debated this on one of our shows, because I completely agree with you. I've never really rated Sterling as that top tier player. For him not to be able to nail down a starting spot for Man City was a big giveaway for me. And Ben sort of vehemently disagreed with me on that one.
No, it wasn't like I wasn't strong like that. It was more that I'm a pessimistic City fan, so I know for a fact that he's going to score against us this season. He just will. So will Jesus. They will score against us. That is just the way it goes.
Yeah, that may be true, to be fair.
Yeah.
Anyway, going back to the Cucurella deal, Nick, you're like, I know you're on Twitter a lot, so you'll probably know more about this whole situation than any of us. But Fabrizio Romano, obviously he's massive. Like, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, he's a massive football journalist. He's been on Sky Sports and stuff. He's sort of heralded as the go-to man. Like, when he says the deal's confirmed, it's confirmed. What do you think about the whole him, like Brighton disagreeing with him, and all of a sudden everybody's turning on him? He's no longer reliable. 2 days later, we find out he was correct, and Brighton were just sort of covering their tracks. In the meantime, do you think that it's crazy that we can trust a football journalist more than we can trust an actual club?
I think firstly, it's great publicity for Fabrizio Romano, obviously, because he's now looking like, well, he always was sort of the Twitter journalist god, and now it's just sort of elevated his status. And on to the Brighton point of them sort of rubbishing the rumours of Cucurella going to Chelsea, I think that might have all been politics. I think they might have just, I don't know, tried to rubbish it, just tried to sweep it under the carpet, even. It was a bit odd considering that a day later they knew it had been confirmed. So I don't really know what Brighton were playing at there. It's interesting because obviously Fabrizio had his contacts and he knew that it was happening. So it's a bit odd for Brighton to turn around and say, no, nothing's going on, when there quite clearly was. Basically, all but done then, maybe a medical completed, everything had been signed, just all waiting just for the announcement to be made, and yet Brighton are sort of rubbishing the rumours. It's a bit odd, to be honest.
Yeah, it's very strange, especially because, like you just touched on there, it sort of elevated his status as the Twitter football god. Like, he is now the most trustworthy source in all of football, really. But it's been very interesting to see throughout sort of the entire transfer window, him and David Ornstein sort of going at it back and forth, sort of like quoting each other and sourcing each other for the different transfers, but all the while trying to beat each other to the punch and sort of get first say on who's gone where. Two massive transfers that happened over the window were obviously Erling Haaland and Darwin Nunez to Man City and Liverpool respectively. We saw them both in action at the Community Shield last weekend. It's very interesting because going into that fixture, Nunez, you would say, had a fairly poor pre-season, whereas Haaland had obviously scored against Bayern Munich. And there was definitely sort of an agenda against Nunez, particularly on Twitter, social media, just everywhere generally. But obviously, Haaland had a very poor game. Nunez scored, and it's kind of flipped on its head. Ben, being a Man City fan, I can only imagine that your response is going to be pro Haaland. But out of the two of them, A, who's going to have a better season, and B, in the long run, which transfer will have been better? Obviously, Liverpool paid more for Nunez, but well, after the performance on Saturday, it's kind of flipped a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that chance, he should have scored that. Absolutely, I can't say anything else. I mean, that's just the way it goes. Player misses, they get bantered. That's just typical football Twitter. Same with when Nunez, if he misses a chance, next game he'll get bantered. Like, it's the way it is. And when we spoke about it on a previous podcast, it's we always knew there was going to be. I mean, we don't know how long, but we always knew there was going to be a bit of period of time where it's us getting used to him and him getting used to us, and then him getting used to the Premier League and getting used to England and stuff like that. Blah blah blah. I don't know. We don't know how long it's going to be. He might hit the ground running on Sunday. I don't know. But yeah, obviously that Community Shield match didn't go well for him, and it went fantastic for Nunez and blah blah blah. But yeah, it's in the long run. I mean, obviously it's hard to tell like which transfer is going to be better. Obviously, I'm going to back Haaland for this season and the long run. But they're both fantastic players. But yeah, like say, it depends. It really does depend on how quickly sort of they both sort of settle and get used to it, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, hopefully, Haaland can do that. But I think it was probably true that it was a little bit. I mean, his mentality is there, and his drive is there. But I do think it's probably true that it was a bit of a shock for him coming up against Van Dijk. I think it probably was a little bit like, oh, right, yeah.
Don't get this in the Bundesliga.
Yeah. I've got to really turn it on here. So yeah, I think I like I say, I think that like his mentality and his drive's there. So he will. Well, hopefully he will get there. But how long that'll be, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And it's interesting you touch on sort of Haaland getting clowned a little bit. I can only imagine that during Nunez's first few fixtures in pre-season, you were one of the ones just slating him to pieces, which is absolutely within your rights as a Man City fan.
I mean, I really, honestly, I wasn't. It's pre-season, isn't it? It doesn't matter at the end of the day. And I think didn't he score a few goals against Leipzig or something as well, or something like. I think.
Okay, he scored 4 goals then, but up to that point he'd been.
Yeah. But I don't really I don't really get it. I mean, obviously the pundits come out and say, as a striker, you miss chances, that happens, blah blah. And obviously there is that, but also it's like he did it. If you actually watch the clip that when he did miss that chance, he did everything right. He he saw the ball, he got back on side, and he was first to react, and then did everything right up until that point, and then just hit the bar. Like, he's still, everything is there, but it's obviously about him settling and then getting used to it, and then once that happens, because he's doing everything right, once he's relaxed, hopefully he'll start scoring those goals. So.
Yeah, well, you'd hope so, wouldn't you? Anyway, but Nick, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Obviously, Haaland, Nunez, both massive strikers. It's interesting that City and Liverpool have chosen this season to sort of like spend the big bucks on a big number 9. We've seen City go after Kane before, and obviously that wasn't particularly successful. But they've got the main man in Haaland for just about half the price of what it would have cost to get Kane. How do you think both of those will fare this season?
Well, look, first, it's interesting sort of the narratives that have been built around the two players. I mean, Nunez scored 5 goals in pre-season, if you include the Charity Shield as well, which is a glorified friendly, versus Haaland only scoring 1 through the friendly pre-season. And it's interesting how the football Twitter mob sort of build up a narrative that just because there's been a few clips coming out of Nunez sort of maybe looking a bit like a donkey doing a few silly things, that all of a sudden he's a flop and he's this and he's that. But I mean, Haaland as well, he's got a system that needs to be built around him. They haven't played with the striker for 2 years since Aguero left. It's going to take a bit of time for him to settle in. It's interesting how sort of the football Twitter mob haven't really slated Haaland as much as Nunez, despite Nunez scoring 4 more goals. I think it's undoubted that Haaland will score goals this season. He's a shoo-in for fantasy football in my eyes. He's one that you can't afford to leave out because City just creates so many chances. I think it's inevitable that he will score 20 plus a season, regardless of how long it takes for him to settle in. I think he's just you can't leave him out. Nunez, on the other hand, similar way, I think he's a bit more improved than Haaland in sort of top level football. Haaland's been playing the Champions League, done very well in the Champions League. And Nunez has been playing as sort of a bit of a farmers league in the Portuguese league. So he's probably a bit more unproven, hence probably why he's been getting a bit more stick from football Twitter. But I think they both will fare well. They both get opportunities. I don't think Nunez will do as well as Haaland, but I think that's just because the stature of the players. I think Haaland's a better player than Nunez, despite their transfer fees. And obviously the chances will come from both sides, but I think maybe City will create a few more chances once for Haaland to score once he's sort of settled in and they've sort of made a system that fits around Haaland.
I agree with that. Go on, Ben.
No, it's like in terms of obviously Haaland got his fair share of slander after the Community Shield, but like it was interesting in terms of talking about creating a system for him. It's interesting because Pep's come out and said like system's not going to change. Like it's basically going to be like it was with Aguero. That's basically what he said. So I mean, I guess this system is changing in the sense that there will be a number 9 in there, but it's not in the sense that we have had a number 9 in there before in Aguero. So it's kind of just going back to that sort of thing.
Again, although it's not about changing the system, it's also just the players that are there already getting used to playing with the number 9 again.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like there was a clip. I think it was De Bruyne and Haaland. They were having a bit of a heated discussion because they're getting used to each other.
Yeah.
But De Bruyne wanted Haaland to make the run. Haaland, is not used to it. Not up to speed. Then Haaland is having, wanted the ball from De Bruyne, and De Bruyne's like, well, I'm not used to you. Like, I'm not, we're not up to speed with each other. Blah blah blah. So there is all these little things to sort of iron out. So yeah, no, absolutely. Like, it just depends how long that's gonna be. But we always knew there was gonna be some form of period of time like that. But
That's
Go on, Nick.
That's probably where the Community Shield would be handy, because although I did say it's a glorified friendly, it's sort of halfway between a competitive match and a friendly. Maybe that's sort of a good opportunity to get up to the pace of things of a normal sort of competitive game. Obviously playing Liverpool as well, who are the next best team other than City. That's probably a good opportunity for those to iron out any potential troubles.
Spot on. Yeah. No, it's interesting that you both touched on sort of the change of system for Haaland in particular. Ben, obviously, you mentioned there that Pep doesn't want to change his system. I think he'll learn pretty quickly that 6'4" Erling Haaland is a little bit different to play with than Sergio Aguero. So that'll be a quick realization, hopefully, if he wants to make the best of it.
Well then, Tom, when Pep Guardiola had a player in a similar mould to Haaland, and the one that comes to mind is Ibra when he was at Barca, he didn't use him to his strengths. Who as well?
Big ego as well. So they've obviously, I don't know if Pep can handle well, maybe that's one doubt that they'll have.
Yeah,
I mean, Ibra and Pep just didn't click at all, and it could be like that with Haaland.
Yeah, no, I mean that is, it is obviously a sort of doubt that you obviously you think of these scenarios and like you think, oh, and that it is true, but I think the difference between, I think obviously he's an ego, but he's got a character, but I think the thing that will help with that is that he's already like really liked in the dressing room, and that's the one thing that City always look for. Obviously they have to be a quality player, but they have to be a good person, and they have to suit the dressing room. So they wouldn't have. I doubt they would have done the transfer if they didn't think that he would integrate into the dressing room. And also he's a City fan, so he will.
I've heard he's a Leeds fan as well.
Oh well,
I've heard he was a Forest fan as well, Nick. But I don't know. It's just really
he was a City fan, so
yeah. Well, he's a City fan. That's it, right? No,
end of story. Yeah, when he moves to Forest in a few years' time, he'll be a Forest fan.
No, I mean, obviously, he's got connection to City when he was younger, as he does with other clubs. But and I think that'll obviously help in terms of having but that extra sort of passion for the club a little bit and stuff like that. But obviously, there probably will be instances with obviously having a character and ego, stuff like that, where there might be a little bit of a clash and stuff like that. Just hopefully they can iron that out and get through that sort of thing. But it is true, like all these things sort of like, I remember when there was the first inkling of City maybe going through, I was like, I'm not sure, like if he might destabilize the dressing room here, but. Like you see some of the clips, and he seems like he's a little. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like he's a little bit more easygoing than Zlatan. He seems like he's a bit more sort of.
And it does seem like he's settled in with all the team. Like he's big mates with Grealish and Phillips and Foden, all that mob. So.
Yeah, it seems like he's a bit more up for some fun than Zlatan, so hopefully it'll be okay. But it definitely has sort of crossed my mind a little, right at the start anyway. And then obviously it takes over that you're like, we need a striker. So but it's true.
You're absolutely spot on. And I think us all, despite following our own teams, being general fans of the Premier League and football in general, we'd all love to see Erling Haaland be incredibly successful and potentially even rival Mbappe as the next Messi and Ronaldo of our generation. Max, I want to hear your thoughts on this in particular, because we haven't really touched on Nunez. We've talked a lot about Haaland and potentially the pitfalls that he could encounter in becoming a success at Man City. But 70 to 80 million, I can't remember the exact figure that they paid for Nunez. But in comparison to the 50 mil that Man City paid for Haaland, Nunez is kind of a massive gamble. And in particular, especially with Liverpool's transfer business previously being like Jota and Diaz for both around the 40 million mark, it definitely broke their sort of transfer mold if you ignore Van Dijk. I just want to hear your thoughts, because you talked before we started streaming about the big teams now switching to a traditional number 9. We know we've touched on sort of the change of systems that might be encountered, but obviously he's had decent preseason form. Do you think that Nunez is an enormous risk? We saw Lukaku last season for Chelsea. They swapped up and brought in a big striker. It failed and they lost 100 million. Do you see that happening for Nunez, or do you think no, Klopp will just mold him and he'll become a success?
I mean, he's come for a big price tag, and he's got big boots to fill because he's replacing Sadio Mane, who guarantees you at least 20 odd goals a season. But I think he'll be okay. I don't think he will be as good as Haaland, but he will be scoring. I would say he'd score over 15 goals. But I think that's just because Liverpool are more likely to rotate than Man City, especially at that number 9 position, because Salah could play there, Jota could play there, and they do have more options probably now than Man City do.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Let's
No,
say
go on, Nick. Go on.
bad games. Does Pep revert back to last season's mold of having a false 9 and maybe sticking a Foden in there?
What's that? Sorry.
That's flexibility that City have.
What? Sorry, you cut out. What did you say?
Oh, did I cut out?
Yeah.
No, I heard you, Nick. So basically, Ben, are City going to revert back to playing a false 9 with potentially a Foden or even a Grealish in the false 9 position? If Haaland, or even the De Bruyne, we saw that last season.
Yeah. I mean,
Haaland's unavailable.
Yeah. No, it could happen. It could happen, and it was one of the reasons that it was one of the more positive things that we had against the top 6 last season, that false 9. Because obviously the defenders, they don't know who to mark, and then with Haaland, they've got he's right there, like they know they're marking him, and that
but then and mark him for the whole Community Shield and sort of mark that name a bit. Even then, it's not chances, so we'll see.
Yeah. But no, you're not wrong. Like that, it could happen. And even if he is scoring in those top 6 games, you might go, you're going to sit out this one. We're going to go with a false 9 here, and we'll bring you on, when they're tiring at the end of the game or something like that. It could happen. I mean, obviously, the majority of the games you would think he's gonna want him to get as many minutes as possible to get used to it as quick as possible. But yeah, no, I think it is a possibility because it has worked. Well, obviously it's worked for the past couple of seasons, but I don't know if it depends if Pep's sort of I don't know if it'll be like an instant thing. Like if he isn't scoring, I think he'd probably try and give him a bit of time. But it might, maybe it would go that way. But I don't know.
And then I think we're all also like discounting Alvarez as well.
Oh yeah, Alvarez. He
looked a good player when he came on in the Community Shield and obviously got his goal.
Yeah.
So he's another player that they could play in the number 9 position.
Yeah.
Easy shot at Haaland. So
I think a lot of City fans, and I mean, my preferred front 3 would be Foden, Haaland, Alvarez.
Really?
For the opening game, because that Community Shield. I mean, obviously Mahrez is a fantastic player, and he will get game time. But I mean, for this coming game, that front 3, I think it's just because it's we've not seen Alvarez that much, and they're all young. That it'd be interesting to see it. But I mean, obviously, like you say, Mahrez is there. He will get game time. But for this first game in particular, it's been interesting to see, because in that Community Shield, when Alvarez came on, he was like, he made an instant impact. He was a breath of fresh air in that game. So it was, he definitely is. I think obviously the signing of Haaland has been the main headline, but he's kind of slipped in underneath that, and he looks like a really good player. So yeah, and obviously he's got the Aguero celebration and stuff like that, and it's Argentinian, so he's continuing that and stuff like that. So obviously it's got a few nice links there and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've spoken about Alvarez before, and he just does seem like a regenerated version of Sergio Aguero. Same sort of player profile, physique, fast, clearly a natural goal scorer. It'll be very interesting to see whether he does get opportunities in the first team this season, or if sort of next season and onwards is where he'll come into fruition. But I think next we're going to touch on Nottingham Forest. It'd be remiss of us not to. We've got Nick and I here, massive Forest fans. Max is here to provide, hopefully, a semi-positive opinion on Forest. I don't know if we're going to hit.
No.
Maybe that would be generous. But Nick, I think we'll start with you first. I know you're just as excited as I am, probably even more excited than me about Forest. You're going home and away this season. What are our chances this season? Do we stay up? Do we push on for top half? Is that too optimistic? Go.
Well, firstly, I've just seen on Twitter that, according to the Daily Mail, so maybe take it with a pinch of salt, we've made an inquiry for Angelino from RB Leipzig. So,
are you joking?
Yeah, breaking news live on the podcast.
Yeah.
When this video hits 500,000 views, we'll know why, and it's because Nick's just announced Angelino.
Well, yeah, I know. Daily Mail's got a bit of a previous in making up a lot of rubbish. But anyway, so back to the point. Obviously, if we get Angelino, my prediction might change. But I think there's so many teams. I was looking, I made a list earlier of the teams that could sort of be dragged down into a relegation dogfight. You know, even like your Leicesters, they're not strengthening. Brendan Rodgers just said today that at the moment they're not looking to make any signings, or they're not able to make any signings. You know, they're going to lose possibly Tielemans, possibly Maddison.
They've lost Schmeichel already, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, Schmeichel.
They're the three key players, really.
So, you know, they could be easily dragged into, maybe not relegation, but definitely sort of 15th-ish. So they're a team that possibly Forest could go up a position or two in the table if Leicester do sort of bomb a little bit. But I think the priority is to stay up. And I think a realistic sort of ambition for Forest is sort of low-end mid-table security, 14th to 15th, I'd be very happy with. I think there's a few teams around us, sort of your Leeds and your Evertons, big question marks over their heads. Bournemouth and Fulham, I mean, Bournemouth, for me, certainly, I've seen them as gone already. Fulham never seems to do particularly well, do they? So, despite having such a good season last season. So, we'll see about Fulham. The jury's still out on Fulham. And then, like I said, Leeds, Everton, Southampton, Wolves, particularly. Brentford second season syndrome. There's a lot of teams that we could finish above. And if we do finish above all those, that's like a 13th place finish. So, we'll see. Obviously, it all depends on how the other teams are going to be, because on their day, we're improving, in the first month or so is going to be probably the time to gel and get all these players together. So it's probably quite hard to predict how we measure up against these other teams so far. But I think the aim's got to be 15th, 16th-ish.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. Obviously, we may be benefiting a little bit from other teams that are likely to have a poor season. I mean, you've got a long list there, but I agree with almost all of them. Leicester's the interesting one for me that you touched on, because you are right. You wouldn't associate Leicester with anything other than pushing for top six, but they've not made a signing. They're going to start the season with Danny Ward in goal, and they're going to probably going to lose Tielemans, Maddison, and Fofana as well. So it's really not looking good for them. And yeah, like you say, I mean, Southampton's the one for me. I've always said they're going to go down this season. I don't think you can sign a bunch of new players that are essentially Man City's academy and stay in the Premier League. I think all of the players they've signed could do with a loan into the Championship first. I just don't see them. Yeah, I don't see them staying up, especially if they lose Ward-Prowse, which they absolutely could before the end of the window.
And
I don't understand the confidence in Everton season either, because they hung on basically with a game or two to go last season. And have they really strengthened Dwight McNeil? Is he really going to help?
Was it one assist last season, something like that?
Yeah, one assist in 34 games.
They weren't rooted to the bottom of the table, Burnley. So obviously, should have probably done a bit better there. And then you've got, I don't know, have they lost any players since last season? Notable players?
Everton. Well, Richarlison.
Yeah. Richarlison, of course. There we go. And obviously, they're a complete mess behind the scenes. So
Calvert-Lewin's injured.
Calvert-Lewin's out for the first month or 6 weeks. So they obviously won't get off to a good start if last season's form without Calvert-Lewin suggests, because they really did struggle last season without him.
And Frank Lampard as well. Although he did well at Derby, I think he found his level in the Championship with £80 million worth of loans, really.
Yeah.
He struggled at Chelsea, he struggled last season at Everton. I think this time Everton are in real trouble.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of people won't remember the ones that aren't like followers of the Championship won't remember Lampard at Derby, but to say he had in his team Fikayo Tomori and Mason Mount alongside Harry Wilson, a bunch of other top-end Championship players. Obviously, they were earlier on in their careers, but to have those three players in particular in their team and finish sixth exactly the same as they did the previous season, I think you're absolutely right in saying Frank Lampard's found his level. Max, I think we have to come to you. It's inevitable. You've got to end the hype train sometime, and I think now's a good opportunity for it. Where are Forest finishing this season, Max?
I think they'll come 17th, just above the relegation zone.
I was not expecting that at all.
Get relegated because I think there are worse teams in the division than you. But we've seen teams before, Fulham a couple of years ago, go up, spend £100 million and it not work and come straight back down. That team's going to take a while to gel. And I think eventually it will, and you will win games towards the end. But at the start, it's going to be a real struggle for you to get to the level that you have to be competing in the Premier League every weekend.
That's what I'm treating the first month. If we can pick up a few points in the first month, maybe go a point a game for the first month, I think we'll be fine. It's just not falling too far behind while our team's gelling in the first few games and then leave ourselves too much to make up the rest of the season.
And I think, to be honest, you have made some really good signings, but other signings are a bit iffy, I'd say.
Go on, then. Who are those, Max?
Are really unproven in the Premier League. That centre mid from Stuttgart is in Mangala.
To be honest, he's one of the best centre mids in the Bundesliga.
Dean Henderson said he's been very, very impressed with our Mangala in training, so we'll see.
He also said that
Dean Henderson,
Derby, so he doesn't really know his stuff.
Go on, Ben. What was that about Dean Henderson? I'd love to hear anything positive out of your mouth about Forest.
Oh, no, I was saying Dean Henderson's Nottingham Forest chief scout or something.
Agent Henderson bringing in Lingard, yeah?
Look, I think with Forest, it's earlier on in the window, I was like, yeah, they're doing what a promoted club should do. They're sticking with the core of the team. They're adding some quality additions to the squad, and then they've got the manager. They've got a fantastic manager. Who they've got the right manager to stay up, and you're looking like you're building the right squad. But now it's there's too many players. QPR did it, and it doesn't work. You can't sign that many players.
What I'll say to that is, it's either make a number of signings or be left with Sam Surridge as our first choice striker, and then
no. But that's what I mean. Earlier in the transfer window, you signed that Owenawi, didn't you? Striker. Yeah. So you're signing though. You need a better striker. There he is. You need a better winger. There he is. You're adding those quality players.
But we've still been doing that. I think the thing that most people don't recognise is that we were so strapped for actual players of quality. It's not like we're spending for spending's sake. We need those.
Yeah, but didn't go to the Premier League on luck.
I mean,
those players must have had quality.
Yeah,
the players of quality were all on loan though.
We had 5 players on loan. Sort of Jed Spence.
Yes, maybe you needed a few more players for squad depth and stuff like that. But even then, when you're signing that many players, it doesn't usually 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work straight away.
I agree.
I mean, I know you're saying it might be a few months before the gel. It might be a season before the gel. You don't know what the time period's going to be.
I mean, some of them just don't fit into the system at all.
What's that?
Some of them just aren't just don't fit in the system.
Such as
that French right back.
Go on, Nick, I'll let you.
As Nick said before, he's just a standard right back.
No, he's a good right back. He can play right centre back and right wing back, so he can He covers for two positions. He's a solid squad player that you need. He might not set the world alight, but he's a solid player. If Worrell or Nico Williams was injured,
5 million as well. He's young. Only 5 million.
Regardless of this, you've still got a really good manager. So if he can get this to work, then fantastic. It's just based on previous teams that have signed that many players, it hasn't worked.
Yeah,
I know, but the thing is, we had no option.
Absolutely.
We had no option, but it still might not work out. But
it might not work out. That's why it's a risk. But it does work out.
I mean, regardless of all those other transfers, I think the one transfer that to me seems a bit off is the Jesse Lingard transfer. Is it him earning 200k? Is that right?
He's not earning 200. Right, Nick, I'll let you take this because I've fought Jesse Lingard's corner for a long time. I'll let you explain to him why.
Well, John Percy's a very reliable journalist. Came out. He wrote an article the other day saying it's only 80,000 a week plus sort of bonuses, quite heavy bonuses. So, but I mean, if one of the bonuses are keepers in the Premier League, then maybe an extra 20-30 grand a week is completely worth it because he's kept in the Premier League in the year, which is worth like another 100 million. He's much needed quality in that position. We hadn't had anyone before that, and he's just sort of a player. He can win games on his own.
It was a little bit false advertising. A little bit, was it? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, what we're hearing at the moment is that West Ham offered him more money, but he chose Forest instead. Right. I don't know how reliable that one is, but
I saw it was either way around. I thought it was
was what was initially reported. Yeah,
right, okay.
That's why I can't work out because a lot of the reliable journalists that we rely on heavily, and they always are right, have said that West Ham offered more money than Lingard, but maybe it was. I think, to be honest, I think the biggest factor was he wanted to stay at home in Manchester, and he can commute every day to training from Manchester to Nottingham. Whereas if he was at West Ham, he'd probably have to sort of rent a flat or whatever you do down there, move full time. So I think that was probably a big factor. Also, the bonuses. If you add on the bonuses, it might work out as more money than West Ham were paying, but the initial 80 grand a week they're getting paid would have been less than
No, it's interesting. Because I mean, the way it was reported, it was to me. I was like, there's something not right there. Like, but no, it is interesting. But like I say, you've got a fantastic manager. You've got a quality manager. So if he can get it to work, fine. But if not, like I say, history suggests it doesn't work. But also, I mean, I understand. Obviously, you probably needed to sign like probably more players than what you had, but it's always. I think the main thing is it depends. It just depends how long it takes to gel.
Yeah,
it really that is the main thing. If it's a couple of months, fantastic. If it's longer than that, you might be struggling. Like that's just the way it is. And I guess it depends on. I mean, it's like I say, it depends on the characters and the dressing room, and if they get along with each other and stuff like that, which I mean, you can't know really until they get in the dressing room together.
Another thing on Jesse Lingard. I think another thing on Jesse Lingard as well. He can be toxic for the dressing room.
No, I'm not having that.
Man United.
I'm with Nick on this. I disagree.
A team culture where everyone in the dressing room is toxic, like he did at Man United. He will be bringing some of that with him, and it's inevitable.
Mourinho liked him at Man United, and he was not very tolerant of players who are bad influence.
I think it's one of them ones. I think it's good to have an awareness of it, because if it does not work out straight away, then you have to be aware that he might kick up a fuss.
I think he's sort of he fits the mold of a player.
But also you can't. It probably won't happen straight away, because obviously he's dead happy at the moment and everything's like good. He's at a new club. He's the main man, blah, blah, blah. So he'll be absolutely fine at the moment. But it's also good just to have that thinking, if this doesn't quite work, he was one of the ones who wasn't happy at United. So he might go, I want out here. And so, it's just one of those things, like, be a little bit, it's like, just I don't know, just to be like aware of it, just in case.
I think Nick's about to touch on this, but the fact that it's a 1-year deal means that he's
has to play
playing
for
to
it.
impress whichever club he's going to be at next. If it's not us, he wants to play for England. There's no incentive for him not. There's every incentive for him to play well. Nick, I know you're dying. Go, Nick.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You know, he's got 1-year deal. The incentive is he's playing for a next club or maybe an extra year with us. So there's no reason for him to kick up a fuss. It's not in his interest. He has to play well for his career for him to get another big move. So even if he does fall out with the players, he can't afford to show that. Otherwise, he's not going to get a big move. Down.
Exactly. If he kicks up a fuss and doesn't play well, he'll be off to Saudi Arabia next season, and that will be that. He doesn't get a chance at another Premier League club.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I hadn't thought that it was a 1-year deal. You're not wrong. But yeah, and I mean, it's still. I mean, the point obviously that there's always two sides to see things as with everything. Like so, it obviously, you're absolutely right. Like obviously, I didn't think it was a 1-year deal.
It's all right, Ben. Don't worry. Nick and I love being right about Forest.
No. I'm not finished yet. I'm not finished.
Okay.
You can't get away without some Notts Forest.
Don't say that.
That's slander in itself. I won't have that on this channel.
Nottingham Forest slander, you see. But yeah, like I mean, it's still something to obviously be aware of. Just maybe he'll extend his contract with you further along down the line in the future. And then maybe it turns sour next season. It's always something to be aware of, and I think that I'm not saying it will happen. Like it's just like you like history suggests if it goes sour, that's what he does, but it might not happen. It's one of those ones.
Yeah,
Gary
he's never really been in a relegation battle unless things go really well, which he'll probably be in. He's never really been in a relegation battle. He's never really been in a relegation battle where like things aren't going his way. He's played in teams that are usually on the front foot, whereas Forest like won't be on the front foot in most games. Teams will come to the City Ground or you'll go away somewhere and they will be not playing you off the park, but do you know what I mean? Like
the way we're set up to play,
if
these teams come on to us, if your Man Cities and your Liverpools come on to us, we're a very quick team on the counter-attack, which means Lingard will have a bit more space to run into and a bit more room to play with. We're not just going to sit back and just defend. We will get the odd opportunity to get forward, and then Lingard will have a lot of space to play with because these teams will probably overcommit to us.
It's the perfect way to play against those teams.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we stay up.
Strong defense, but
I think the teams before that have yo-yoed a little bit. I think Fulham in particular, after they spent 100+ million, they came up trying to play the same way they did in the Championship, which was dictate possession and try and play the other team off the park. If you do that in the Premier League and you're newly promoted, you're going straight back down. If you look at Leeds, Brentford, Sheffield United, the teams that have stayed up at least a season, they've all been counter-attacking. Like all really high intensity sides that just take the chances when they come and defend well. And I think that's the way Forest stay up. It's not going to work playing possession football.
That's why I think if you compare us to the two other promoted teams, you look at Bournemouth and Fulham, they're like total football and they did dominate teams last season. But like you said, they won't be able to do that in the Premier League. And then there's question marks over their defensive capabilities like Fulham. They got Tim Ream at the back.
How is Tim Ream a Premier League footballer? I don't understand that at all.
So they've got question marks over their defence, and they're obviously when you're down the bottom, you're going to have a lot of pressure going to your defence. So I think that's one thing that we were good at last year. We didn't leak many goals. We built from the back. We were very, very solid at the back. I mean, there was a bit of lack of pace last year, but we've addressed that with Moussa Niakate. It looks a very good signing. So I think we'll be all right this year.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Nick. I think for the benefit of the neutral, we'll move away from Nottingham Forest here. But that was a great debate. I really enjoyed that, actually. Obviously, I think, Ben, you've been slacking a little bit with fantasy football. You've not set up your team yet. But Nick and Max, I know the three of us have talked about it pretty much non-stop in our own mini league. Fantasy football this season, obviously the Premier League kicks off tonight. You'll all know that because this video will be probably releasing about exactly the same time as Arsenal Palace starts. But I just wanted, I spoke to you guys before the show started. I wanted to hear one player that is absolutely nailed that you have to have in your fantasy football team. I know you've not spoken to each other about it, so if they're all Salah, I won't mind as long as we all make a good point about it. And then also one player that could surprise people that is, well, we call it a differential in fantasy football, but just a player that nobody else has really touched on or thought about much. Max, let's start with you, shall we?
Okay, so my nailed on player is Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think you have to have him in your team. The amount of assists that he produces from right back, free kick goals, goals from open play, and he's done it across like the last 5 seasons or so. 5? Is it 5? Or less?
He's been around for ages, despite the fact he's like 22. Yeah.
So I think you have to have him in your team, and then he'll also pick up clean sheet points. And Liverpool usually don't leak many goals in seasons past, so I think he is the man that you've got to have. And then my differential, this is a really, really rogue shout. I'm going for Jadon Sancho.
Okay. I'm curious to hear this. Yeah.
Ronaldo potentially going out the door, and it gives Sancho the opportunity to be the main man in that Man United team. He's had a year to adapt to the league. He knows the pace. I would have hoped he'd been working hard in like this pre-season, because he knows himself that he didn't have a good season last year, and he knows an £80 million he has to improve. He knows. Ten Hag coming in playing attacking football. From pre-season, they look like they're free scoring in most games. So Sancho is really, I think, the difference.
That's a very interesting one, yeah. Especially with him being the main man. I think if he gets about Bruno Fernandes perhaps taking that mantle back if Ronaldo goes. But Sancho definitely an interesting shout. Hopefully for the sake of us being all being England fans, second season syndrome kicks in and he actually plays like he did at Borussia Dortmund. Nick, go on then. Hit me with it.
Like I said earlier, I think Haaland's one that you can't afford to miss out on just because City is so free scoring and he's obviously the main man at the top. Big signing, big name. I think he's just too good to miss out. You can't afford to miss out on maybe him scoring 4 or 5 goals 1 week against a Bournemouth or a Fulham or even a Forest, dare I say it. He's one that I just don't think you can afford to miss out on. And my differential. Sorry? Yeah, my differential.
Yeah, differential, yeah.
This is very different. I've got William Saliba in my back line, 4.5 million. Arsenal fans have been very optimistic about his opportunities this year. He's been starting in the back line all pre-season for Arsenal. They're saying he's a nailed-on starter for the first game this evening. So we'll see when the team gets released in about 10-15 minutes. We'll see. But I think William Saliba, 4.5 million, obviously allows you, if you've got cheap players that will pick up regular points, you got more opportunities to go big with sort of your Haalands and your Sons and your Salahs.
Yeah, that's actually a great shout. I hadn't really considered him because he's, well, obviously a centre-back. When Tomiyasu is fit, you'd imagine he'll start, and in a back four, White's probably preferred over Saliba. But yeah, definitely at the start of the season, Saliba could be a great shout.
I've been seeing a lot of Arsenal fans saying they prefer Saliba over to Ben White, but we'll see.
That is very interesting.
At £50 million, Arsenal would feel like they have to start Ben White.
True, yeah, but then do they prefer Ben White over Tomiyasu at right back? Because if they do, Tomiyasu was a cheap signing. Yeah.
They've been playing Ben White because I think is Tomiyasu injured at the minute, or
he is injured at the minute. So Saliba's nailed on for the time being. Yeah.
Yeah, Ben White's been playing right back in pre-season, obviously allowing space for Saliba to play in the middle. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Ben, let's hear it from you.
Nailed on. Oof.
I think you've got 4 or 5 options here.
Yeah, you've got 4. I say there's a few players that everyone can't cram into their fantasy team.
Yeah, I mean,
I
don't know. I mean,
from a Man City perspective, tell me one player that doesn't play for Man City.
Yeah, trying to think of
Man City. Come on.
I mean, obviously Salah's like the.
Okay, there we go. Mo Salah, we found him.
I was trying to think of my left field option, but yeah, we'll go with the so that Salah is obviously like an obvious one. He'll score goals. He'll get assists. Standard stuff. Left field one. I'm trying to think because Kiz sent me his FPL because he was like, "Yeah, this is what I've got. Like, you
I
should
can
do
give you
it."
another one if you like.
And it was, I was like, "Yeah, we'll do." And then I forgot. But anyway, yeah, yeah. What was he? I think he put
Do
Rashford.
you want me to give mine before
No,
whilst you have a little think about
No,
it?
I think he put Rashford in, which was an interesting one because he's looking, quite. He's looking like he's been hitting gym in pre-season, looking like he's, wanting to hit the ground running. So it's dependent to see. He might be a surprise this season because he's obviously got it.
He's
but
only
just
6.5 mil, I think, as well. So it's quite
Yeah.
cheap.
Yeah, 6.5 million, so quite cheap this season. Yeah, and a midfielder as well.
Yeah, he's obviously still got it, but he's just his mentality, like something mentally is not been there. Like he's not been enjoying it. He's not had the confidence.
I think missing the penalty in the Euros had a big effect on him, and obviously all the abuse that he got over social media because of that.
He had surgery straight after the Euros, didn't he? And he came back quite late, and I don't think he really got into the swing of things after that.
Yeah.
So hopefully, a proper pre-season behind him, he'll get firing again.
Yeah, you're all right. I think Rashford is actually a great shout. I think a lot of people have actually considered him a great shout. Probably similar to Sancho for you, Max. Just one of the players that could thrive without Ronaldo being in the team, so that they can sort of be the main man again. He is the number 10 for Man U, and that has to mean something, especially to him being from Manchester as well. For my picks, I've got Harry Kane as the nailed-on one. Seeing him in pre-season and seeing what Conte's done to the Spurs squad in general, not just in terms of the additions in midfield, but what he's actually done to them physically. He's killed them essentially, but I'm expecting Harry Kane to be an absolute monster at the start of the season. He's got, I think, 6 contributions in 3 or 4 games over pre-season. It's Southampton first game, and as I said earlier, I've tipped him for relegation. I can only see him bagging a couple. And then my left field pick. This is going to be an interesting one, actually, particularly for fantasy football, but Ivan Toney. Now, Ivan Toney, in his first 10 fixtures, has 1 game you'd consider difficult, and it's Man U. 1 game, and it's Man U at home, and you can easily see him scoring in that. I just think he's had a decent pre-season. We know how good he is on penalties. If Brentford get a pen, he's going to score it. That's guaranteed. Brentford are the type of team that they'll nick a couple of goals in a match every so often, or they'll just win like 1-0 at home or something. But you know that 9 times out of 10, Ivan Toney will be the player to score that goal. And all you need in fantasy football is a reliable mid-price striker to net every once in a while and get 3 bonus points. And I just think Ivan Toney is that man. I think he's only like 4 or 5% owned as well. So absolutely a differential. We'll see. He'll probably score an own goal and get sent off in the first game against Leicester. But I mean, that's the beauty of fantasy football. If that happens, you can't be mad about it. You just got to go, this is why the game is so much fun and everybody enjoys it. But yeah, there's some very interesting picks there. Rashford and Sancho in particular, very similar, probably for very similar reasons they've been chosen. Nick, your Saliba shout, I was not expecting that at all. I think
Nico Williams, because he's my other one.
Yeah, Nico Williams and then Brennan Johnson, because nobody's talking about Brennan Johnson, but I know that both you and I have got him in our teams, and
more Forest chat.
Yeah, I don't know.
Viewers have had enough of this, Tom.
He's on set pieces.
He's turning up.
He's on set pieces. He's the main man. What's not to love about him as an FPL asset? Is £6 million.
£6 million as well. It's gonna be double digits this season, I reckon.
I agree. But yeah, as Max says, we'll stop the Forest talk. We've had a lot of it. Everyone's had their fun, namely me and Nick. But I just think we'll finish off the video with not just the predictions for who's going to win the league. We've discussed so many times in previous videos about who we think is going to get relegated. Ben and I have. Nick's touched on it. Max has offered his thoughts. But from each of you, obviously it's between City or Liverpool. Who's winning the league? Ben, nice and quick. Go on, tell us Man City.
Got to back City.
Go on, Max.
I'm going City.
Nick.
Fuck no, City.
Yeah, I wish. I was half expecting you to say that, to be fair. But yeah, I think City for me as well. They're just they're too strong, aren't they? Like Liverpool can be great in moments, but City are the team to just walk over anyone 6-0 in the league if they just feel like it. So yeah,
the only thing that well, not the only thing, but one of the main thing that will make it difficult for us is if we get injuries at the back and we don't get a left back. That will really hurt us.
Yeah, I think
Liverpool
had that couple years ago.
If you look at your under-23s, they win the under-23 Premier League nearly every season. So whoever that is, I don't actually know, but whoever that is,
players like Luke and Bette,
Josh
Wilson Esbrand, James McAtee, obviously Cole Palmer. There's some players in there that would start. Yeah, there's some players in there that would start for half of the league. So. But yeah. I think we'll finish off this episode. Crystal Palace versus Arsenal tonight. First game of the Premier League season. I know we're all very excited. Score predictions. Ben, we'll start with you.
Ooh, 2-0 Arsenal.
Nick?
1-1.
Ooh, Max?
2-1 Arsenal.
Okay, I'm going to go with 3-1 Arsenal. I don't have Jesus in my fantasy, and I just know he's going to bag a hat-trick because of that. So, yeah, it's going to be a great watch tonight. I know we're all very excited about just the Premier League coming back in general. I was speaking to Nick earlier, and I think the one for me is Match of the Day. Forest being on Match of the Day is just peak levels of being a football fan. But yeah, I think that's all for now. Nick, Max, you've been fantastic guests. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, Ben, as usual, solid number 2 on the show. I think Macca's is coming back in a few days' time, and so he'll be back to do regular videos for you guys. I think he's got a couple up his sleeve that he's ready to roll out. But yeah, this was really good. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you made it this far, give it a like and subscribe if you're new. But yeah, see you later.